Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And welcome to November. The first, as it is. I was going to say as it were, which I guess is correct as well. I don't know. How you doing? Me too. There's some good news. Did I just say that? There is some good news. Well, kind of. But I'm not going to start with it. I'm going to leave you hanging for a while. And what passes for good news now is just simply human beings talking to each other. That is what good news is. You know, I was thinking that years ago, I always was very reluctant to bring up. I said it's one of the things I don't like talking about. It was Israel and Jews because of how fraught the subject is, and then it seems odd that a subject should be fraught like that one is, and now I'm seeing what we're seeing now is really astonishing, although it shouldn't be. My problem with my former compatriots on the left is very real. It doesn't make me into a Republican, but it makes me somebody with no comfortable political home. It does push me toward more moderate politicians, I guess, but it does not push me into Crazyville. I once tried so hard to hang on to a friendship that I had with a very left-wing person. I mean, a true commie and a wonderful person in so many ways. But her politics and my politics were always getting in the way. And it was on 9/11 that they just blew up. And her wife begged us to go to a mediator to save the friendship, to talk. And we did that, and it was difficult, but we stumbled on. That friendship is now in ruins. And we are estranged, and that happened after the death of her partner, her wife, the one who kept us together. I was with friends last night, and one of them said that her daughter-in-law and her son, the son is a Presbyterian, the daughter-in-law is a non-practicing Jew. She was talking about how they had lost friends. They are in their late 30s, how they had lost friends and even were finding themselves estranged from some family members over this. And that is something that is happening. Friendships are being lost. Families are being born. And a lot of people, I'm not even talking about the ones who are in the midst of the horror, but a lot of people here and around the world are suffering. I want to try to make clear. I don't know that I'll ever reach any of my former friends on the left in regard to this, but what they have done and always did do, and I did try over the years to respond to this. I remember talking about how Jews are never considered one of the groups that deserves the sympathy of the social justice warriors. Never. Because Jews have been put into the box of the bad guys, the oppressors, and are seen as white, so they're privileged and all that kind of stuff that allows them to make the world more understandable and to translate it into easy good guys, bad guys, bumper sticker stuff, if you ask me, even though it is most rampant on college campuses and has, created a whole new language, intersectionality, that kind of stuff, the colonizers. Sometimes when these folks talk, I don't even understand what the hell they're talking about. And the thing is, increasingly, I don't think they understand what they're talking about. So I read today, I think it was in the Washington Post, and this is in regard to the, just extraordinary increase in anti-Semitic activity around the world. But the article referred to this young cohort of so-called progressives, folks who I've marched with, stood with, and who now look at me as the enemy because I'm a Jew who supports Israel. And this article says this about trying to explain it, that all of this, the way they see it is everything is part of an anti-colonial struggle. This is how you look at the history of the world. And I mean, good God, we all know that the history of the world is a history of conquest, a history of war, a history of people taking things from others. I hate to tell you, this country that we're sitting in right now, we took it. And when I say we, the people who came here, as you know, sort of wiped out the people, or certainly marginalized them, the people who were here before. It's not an uncommon story, the entire history of North and South America, the entire bloody history of Asia, of Europe, of Africa, is a story of humans taking from each other. So I guess you could sort of decide to look at everything in terms of colonizing. And what the left is about is they're against it. They are against it. Fine. Well, you might as well be against humanity, because the entire history of humanity which suggests that there ain't no changing this dynamic. But the article said this. Here's a line from it. And here's where you get one of those new words. In this intersectional worldview, the fight against Israel, and often Israel's very existence, becomes part of a global battle of the oppressed for justice. In this good and evil matrix, Jews don't fare well. This is what we're all seeing now. And it is laughable, is it not? That in a matrix about people who have been harmed grievously, run from their land over and over again, expelled, killed, Jews somehow, to the left's intersectionality paradigm, Jews are oppressors. That's it. And here's where these brilliant social justice warriors show their ignorance. Many of them, I suspect, have never been to Israel. If you were to go to Israel, I'll tell you what you see. You see more dark-skinned people than white people. Fascinatingly, the majority of Jews in Israel are what are called Mizrahi Jews. Mizrahi Jews. They are the Jews who lived for gazillions of generations in northern Africa and in Iraq and Lebanon and Turkey, in the Middle East and North Africa. These are the ones I was talking about yesterday that were sent packing by all of those Arab nations in 48. And many of them, where are they going? They went to this new Jewish state that had been created. They went to Israel. This idea that it was a bunch of white European colonizers that created Israel is nuts. Yes, there are Ashkenazi, those are the European Jews. I am one of those. Yes, Ashkenazi Jews, Jews from Russia and Lithuania and Poland, Eastern Europe, the ones who were stuck into what was called the Pale of Settlement and were beset and besieged for hundreds and hundreds of years, killed every once in a while when somebody needed to get off on it, and sent packing. It's why my grandparents came to this country, ran for their lives. Thank God. I wouldn't exist if they didn't. The Jews in this country that you live amongst are the lucky ones whose grandparents or great-grandparents were smart enough to get the hell out of Dodge before the Holocaust, that grand killing of Jews that happened in my family's lifetime, my father's, my mother's. So Jews have been indigenous to the Middle East. This is what the lefties don't know. We have been there. We have been part of it. They were not. There are so many people in Israel who are the farthest thing from colonizers you can imagine. I told you about, on one trip, who I I happened to talk to an Israeli guy, a farmer, and I asked how long his family'd been there. And I was expecting, something like, I don't know, 60 years. His family had been there for something like 500 years on that same land. They had come at the end of the 15th century when the Spanish Inquisition was busy killing Jews or sending them running for their lives. His ancestors made it to Israel then and settled and farmed generation after generation after generation. But none of this matters, right? Nothing I'm telling you matters, because the people who want Israel's destruction are not inclined to listen to facts, to history. I mean, how far back do you go? They will go as far back as 1948. The left does, pretty much, when Israel was created. But Jews, when we think of the history, oh boy, do we go back a whole lot farther. Jews living on that real estate were conquered so many times, it's a joke. I don't know if you've heard about the first temple going down and the second temple we built going down. Those things happened so long ago that it's a joke. Why is that not recognized as a legitimate? That was the Jewish homeland. Where was Jesus, the Jew? Was he not in his homeland? When I go to Israel, I walk where Jesus walked. You can walk right up to the Sea of Galilee. You can walk right where he was. You can be, and that's the thing about Israel. It's mind-blowing, the complexity of the history there, and the stupid, simplistic, ignorant, pro-Palestinian crowd. And I am not against Palestinians, but you know what crowd I'm talking about. The know-nothings. The ones whose knowledge of history goes back to maybe last week. And whose hearts bleed only for some people, some dead children. Dan Rather, who I've always liked, he must be really old now, man, but he's still sharp as a tack. He wrote something. I'm not going to read all of it to you. It's too long, but this is a sharp mind. This is a knowledgeable man, okay? This is a guy who's not taking sides, okay? He says this, in part. War is hell. Always. And it is a special kind of hell when it ensnares innocent civilians, especially children. Anyone with a soul and a conscience must face what is happening now in Gaza and what happened on October 7th in Israel with a sickening heartache. The stories, the pictures, the tally of loss and misery. It is unbearable. Every instinct of our common humanity should desperately want the bloodshed to stop immediately. Peace is always preferable. These sentiments should have no qualification, but sadly, our imperfect and tortured world, buffeted by history, injustice, and hatred, sometimes creates situations where there is only tragedy. Not every problem has an easy answer, or even an answer at all. For millennia, that region of the world has been a tangle of war-torn ambition and animosity. It has been the, the crossroads of continents, the cradle of religions, and the graveyard of would-be empires. And these are the ingredients for conflict. To walk the land in Israel is to stride across layer upon layer of civilizations long gone and largely forgotten. The ruins teach hard lessons about hubris, exaltation, and defeat. They are interwoven narratives that often begin and end in war. You cannot tell a story about the Middle East without reckoning with what preceded it. History always creeps in. And in this current conflict, we can once again hear the thundering echoes of the past. Where do we begin? It's a deceptively easy answer to ask, but the choice one makes shapes everything that comes next. Do we begin centuries ago? Millennia ago? Or more recently? Do we talk about the Holocaust? The partition? Palestinian statehood? Failed peace deals? The settlements? The assassinations? The role of the Arab states? Iran? Hezbollah? The failures of Israeli governments, anti-Semitism, double standards, and on and on. Whatever framing we choose, there is always something important that lies outside our view. But we can be sure that whatever era we choose to focus on will include strife and death. And we can be doubly sure that it will be seen through radically different lenses, depending on whom we ask. That's just the beginning of the piece written by Dan Rather, and I think it is brilliant. He ends with this: the best we can hope for in a time of no good options is leaders who understand that we live in a world of conflict where compromise is hard, but ultimately essential. Wisdom requires constantly reevaluating and readjusting one's strategy in service to long-term goals. military campaigns end. And when this one does, what will have been the cost? What will follow? What will remain? What will be forever changed? The answers to these questions are currently unknowable, but they will be the means by which this era is judged. Wars are fought in the present tense, but their full impact emerges only in the future. In the meantime, all too often, there is only tragedy. So the head of the FBI testified yesterday, or no, you rarely hear from those guys, and he, among many things, says that, quote, excuse me, I'm quoting him, "I will say that this is a threat." He's talking about threat of anti-Semitism in this country. "I will say this is a threat that is reaching in some ways historic levels." Well, I can say as a Jew who's lived my whole life here, yeah, I think that's true. Historic levels. He went on to say the Jewish community is targeted by terrorists across the spectrum. You know the song I've been singing a lot. And everybody hates the Jews. So he noted it by saying, when it comes to Jew hate, they are targeted across the spectrum. And in case you're not understanding, it's what I have been saying. It's coming not just from the Nazi types on the right. It is coming, and this is what my friends, the progressive ones, need to acknowledge and deal with. It is coming from the left. It's wonderful when the left and the right can agree on something. And what they agree on is dead Jews are fine. So he says that while Jews represent less than 3% of the population of the United States of America, I think we're 2.4, 2.6%. We account for 60% of all religious-based hate crimes. And those are statistics from before this. Those are stats from 22. A people who comprise less than 3% of America's population are on the receiving end of 60% of all religious hate crimes. But they are not, if you ask anyone on the left, to be considered a marginalized group worthy of any compassion. Between October 7, when Hamas did its handiwork, and October 23, there were over 300 anti-Semitic acts in the United States. That has just been growing and growing and growing. I've seen a number of close to 400% increase. Historic levels, as Ray says. The Jews are targeted across the spectrum by homegrown violent extremists, by foreign terrorist groups, domestic violence extremists. several foreign terrorist groups have issued direct calls to attack Jews in America and elsewhere. The Islamic movements are telling their listeners to form sleeper cells and support operations against the Jews. This particular message, according to the FBI director, was from Al-Qaeda, and he said it was the most specific call to attack within the United States that intelligence officials here have seen in 5 years. And so to see this many foreign terrorist organizations explicitly calling for attacks elevates the potential of true terror happening in the United States. Well, way out. If you look at Europe right now, the Jews who stayed in Europe, and there aren't a lot, because Europe has been a killing field for my people in my mother's lifetime. And you talk to any Jew in Europe right now, and they truly are scared. This article, I believe, Washington Post, perhaps not since the Holocaust, which saw the annihilation of 2/3 of Europe's Jews, have the Jews of Europe lived in an atmosphere of fear so acute that it feels like a fundamental shift in the terms of their existence. And when you think, I'm sorry, the social justice warriors, why aren't they in the streets protesting this horrible, murderous hatred of this tiny group of people? That's their MO, isn't it? The left, the social justice warriors, who I've stood with all of my life. Isn't that the MO? Except, turns out, we didn't know that. I didn't see the asterisk. I didn't see the footnote. Except for the Jews. Since Hamas did its handiwork, Britain's Community Security Trust says that it has recorded 805 anti-Semitic acts, the highest number in that short a period that they've ever seen. The police in London are saying there is a significant increase in hate crime, particularly against Jews, but intersectionality. I saw this, and it broke my heart because it was a post from a young person on the left. My guess is it's a Jew. It says this: before October 7th, I actually believed in social justice movements. I believed that there were large swaths of people who cared unequivocally about women, who cared unequivocally about people of color, who cared unequivocally about members of the LGBTQ plus community. then I saw firsthand that they don't. They don't care about women if they're Jewish. They don't care about people of color if they are Jewish. And they don't care about LGBTQ plus people if they're Jewish. Hell, they don't even care about children if they're Jewish. I can rail into the wind and it will make not a whit of difference. If Jews start being killed here in the US, which I suspect will happen, well, did I just say that? I already can name dead Jews here, some of whom I knew. And remember when I used to say I didn't like talking about this because I knew that people just inherently are sick and tired of hearing Jews bitch and moan about their unique history of being the world's scapegoat. I think what I know, even people who are kind-hearted but who aren't Jews, sort of in the back of their heads are thinking the same, like, just STFU. For those of you who don't know, shut the fuck up. Well, I told you I had some good news. It really gladdened my heart. There is a story in the arts section of the New York Times. Of course, I can't find it now. About a school in Germany. Oh, there it is. Sorry, it's on the floor. Hang on. Old person bends over. That was the soundtrack. It's about a school, an academy in Berlin. And it's called the Barenboim Said Academy. It's a music conservatory. And it takes in young musicians from around the world, specifically from the Middle East, but not totally. It was founded by the Israeli conductor Daniel Barenboim with the intention of bringing together students from the Middle East and parts of Europe, and thinking, they're wondrous musicians. So in order to play together, play their instruments together, make beauty together, they have to sit together. They have to interact. They have to know each other. So the article is about how this horror, which, as I said when I started the show, is tearing families apart, is tearing friendships apart. How could this school survive? And Barenboim, who is now 80 years old, who's been working for much of his life to bring people together, he spoke to the students the other day, and he said to them, "It takes courage for you to be here. We have to listen to each other, which could well serve as what the academy, this conservatory, is all about. We have to listen to each other. And they talk about how it's, it ain't necessarily going. I mean, this thing, you can imagine, is such a challenge. A Palestinian violinist said he was uncertain about the role of music in this moment. But some of his Israeli colleagues have said to him, you say what you need to say. We respect your right to say it. While others have accused him of spreading lies. So it's all there. But they are still together and reaching out to each other. Barenboim has also created a music school in Ramallah. Much of what he has done has always been denounced by certain Palestinians and certain Israelis. But at the academy, they have to put on a concert this week. And it says here in the article, some Palestinian students, excuse me, were having doubts about performing, concerned that they would project an aura of harmony at a time of deep division and suffering. But after prolonged debate, they decided it was important to embrace the spirit of the institution. And at the concert, the students released a statement that said, in part, our hearts are heavy, our minds are elsewhere, with every single person affected by the devastating situation in Palestine and Israel. May our music bring us together. May it help heal a little piece of our hearts. And Barenboim took the stage to conduct. They did works by Prokofiev, Wagner, Beethoven, and he praised the musicians about how extraordinarily wonderful they were. And he asked for a moment of silence. And then he said, the situation is inexplicable and my words cannot change it. But we are happy to perform for you today. And after the performance, there was a standing ovation and the members of the orchestra embraced each other on stage. The pianist in one of the pieces that was played was Israeli. And one of the violinists was Palestinian. And the two of them had not spoken for a while. And after the performance, they came together and started speaking and found out that they had once lived about 20 minutes apart from each other. And he said, the landscapes and the smells and the tastes and the flavors that we grew up on is all shared. And the Palestinian young musician, the violinist, said, receiving support in this time from the other side, the side you learned to hate, had moved her. And she said, now is the time to remove the walls and look at each other. The moment you just look in someone's eyes and you understand we're just the same. That was the good news. Milton says, this morning, you are making, this morning you are making the argument that I have been making with my son and his neo-left friends for the past 2 weeks. Their position of Jewish folks as colonizers is laughable and historically inept. This is a 5,000-year-old struggle. Started because one dude, Abraham, couldn't keep it in his pants. Sarah and Hagar, see Genesis, by the way, 16:23. This isn't about white European colonizers stealing land from poor Palestinians. This is about an indigenous people's return to their ancestral homeland, which, by the way, you think the left would be all over applauding. An indigenous people's return to their ancestral homeland and being able to live, grow, and flourish once again on that land. Everything else is prejudice and political minutia. These are Milton's words. The current position of many on the left on this subject is as ill-informed. It is ill-informed, historically one-sided, and frankly embarrassing. Would that they were embarrassed by it. Would that they were. Little Tony writes, I couldn't listen live yesterday and listened later in the day and heard you mention Summer Lee. Found the article about the rabbi's letter to her. Yeah, a whole bunch of rabbis and cantors in the Jewish community here, represented supposedly by Summer Lee in Congress, wrote her a letter. And, you know, there's a lot of jokes about Jews, you know, always. If you have, you know, Jews argue with each other all the time. We are verbal and passionate people. And Jews are split into different, you know, there's Orthodox, there's ultra-Orthodox, there's so-called conservative, there's Reform, there's Reconstructionist, there's, I couldn't forget some of the others. There is a bunch of different ways for Jews to be Jews. And yet the basic prayers are all the same. So these rabbis wrote a letter to her saying that they were pretty alarmed at her failure to understand their point of view and to represent them. And they asked to meet with her, and she has said she will do so. I am telling you right now, this will do her in. I said that yesterday. Little Tony writes, I held my nose and voted for her last time. I am not crazy for the progressives. I was sad when Mike Doyle retired. I wish he could have held on a few more years, but I can't blame him for going. Anyway, I won't make the same mistake again. I don't know if there are enough of us to get her out of office, but I hope so. I hope someone good runs against her. She made a mockery of the Tree of Life tragedy, whether she meant to or not. And I hope it will haunt her political career. Yeah, she's going to be in trouble. A whole bunch of Jews voted for her. And she called us what was her word? Sort of a little part of, I can't think of the word. Maybe some of you can remember. Fine. No, the progressives have lost me as well. They've been losing me for some time. And as I said at the beginning, it does not mean that then I turn into a raging Republican. Good God. It means, as I said, I feel like a Jew wandering in the desert with no home. We have a call. Hello.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hi. I'm going to ask you a question based on a version of discussion we've had before. Being in my position, not being Jewish, not being of a minority, all these, straight white guy born and bred in this country.
Hey, wait, before you go any further, I want you to apologize.
I know.
For being a white, cis, heterosexual, Christian probably, male, whatever. This is, again, I'm putting it to the fucking progressives, right? I'm so sick of you guys. Yeah, Roger, grovel and apologize for yourself, you colonizer, you son of a bitch. You're unworthy for any sympathy from anybody who is a right-minded, good-hearted progressive. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Worse than that, it's like I'm trying to what is there to be? What can we do? Because I'm sitting in I'm looking from my vantage point, and I see Israel was attacked, and we're attacked, but also I see Netanyahu has been awful for Israel. I think he's always been a little heavy-handed.
I so cannot stomach that horrible human. He's gone.
So
this does finish him off.
But the thing is, and it looks like he's played right into Hamas's hands. And everything we're seeing, I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened anyway, is a result of his apparent heavy-handedness, because he basically said, we were attacked, we're gonna do what we're gonna do, that's it. And I can't blame him for that in some way, but at some point, there is a humanitarian aspect of it.
Oh yes.
And
listen, all Netanyahu knows is saving himself. That's all he's been up to forever. And now he's trying to save himself again by, showing no ability to, maybe allow more humanitarian Although I have to tell you, again, it gets complicated. If you're fighting people who don't fight fair, and then Israel, and who hide behind their own people. If you can make a pretty good argument that the people who's got blood on their hands for the deaths of Palestinians right now are Hamas. What they did,
absolutely,
it was their plan. It was their plan to cause these deaths, to cause Israel to do what it did. So knowing, and they know that the world will rise up against Israel, and that's exactly what's happened. Hamas, maybe you could argue, was just brilliant with its plan for this. But its plan sacrifices a whole bunch of Palestinians with no problem whatsoever. I mean, how is Israel supposed to fight them if they are hiding under hospitals and schools?
And that's the question, and that's why I can't side with anybody who's taking a hardline stance either way. The Jews are bad. No, the Jews are doing what they have to, or Israel has to do what they have to do. I can't say, well, you're 100% right or you're 100% wrong. But how can anybody just like get so, especially like people who really don't have a bone in the game, like these students at Cornell, what is their axe to grind? Why are they being so? It's like it's a terrible thing that's happening. You should be sad about it, not outraged by it. And
listen, they're getting off on this. They're getting off on it. I mean, there's nothing more. Listen, I was a student activist back when I was young, and there's something unbelievably exhilarating about being in a pack, and screaming at the powerful, or what you perceive as the powerful, and causing trouble. I mean, there's just something extraordinarily exhilarating about it. It's sort of what's been said about, to understand the cult of Trump, you have to go to some of his rallies, that the people there are like having fun. It's fun to be angry. It's fun to have people that you demean and you scream at and threaten. And it's the same kind, again, unfortunately, we're talking about human nature, which is the real problem always. But these kids, I hope they at least grow up to get smarter. There's a lot of their professors are with them, and they do not have the excuse of being young.
I guess, but I think it's a certain personality too, because I understand the whole the energy that you have when you get upset about something and you get angry about it and you fume. But that's sort of like taking a dose of, getting a sugar high. For me,
that's right.
For me, I'll say I can only speak for myself. It's like, you get that sugar high, you go crazy for a few minutes, and then you're depleted, and you don't feel better. You don't feel good later on. But again, that's why I asked the question: is this personality driven? Like talk about the Trump people. Like, how can you stay angry for so long? It's without just.
It feels good. It feels
yourself.
Good.
Is it an addiction? I guess, and it becomes
Maybe.
your fuel for fuel for life, which is, for these people to call themselves Christian is very,
I know.
It really is. It's okay. I don't understand how anybody have any strong feelings for one way or the other. It's terrible.
Well, here, let me share. Let me share this with you because our time is up anyway. And again, I'm going back to Dan Rather, who somebody told me looked up. He's 92 years old and a smart cookie. And he said this: beware of anyone who speaks in absolutes about the Middle East, especially when it comes to the certainty of their beliefs. What should be done is a question that should prompt self-reflection, not bombastic lectures. The best military and political leaders try to challenge their own preconceptions and biases. They, the best, constantly ask themselves, what am I missing? Well, the students on the campuses and the people in the streets are full of bombast and certainty and absolutism, and that tells you something. They're wrong.
Here's one thing I am really certain of. The more I know, I realize the less I know.
And that is so true. Yeah.
All right. So
you're getting wiser with age. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want you to go and I want you to go through life now with your knees bent and your head bowed, because you are a white male cis Christian heterosexual whatever the hell you are, man.
I'm gonna go drink beer and watch football. That's what I'm gonna do.
Okay, do it. Good idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Okay, guys, listen, so many of you have sent me your emails, but I need more. I mean, really, I'm getting a lot. I love it. If you have not sent me your email, and don't assume I have it, just send it to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. As you know, there's some possibility that I'll be moving, and I want to be able to get to you if that were to happen, so we can stay together, since I think of you as family. Okay? Thank you. And talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.